Right, so a couple of the questions have been about the anatomy of the breath and what happens. Wendy, if you have to leave, that's fine. We'll work out a way for me to check your apnea. But I think your last time I looked at your apnea was grams, so we'll just see what we do here. So the anatomy of breath is this. As we inhale, our lungs start to fill with air. So as our lungs start to fill with air, usually people do one of three things. No, one of four things. They either, as their lungs start to fill with air, don't use their rib cage. The rib cage is rock solid, and this is bad for aging, as well as everything else. But their rib cage stays rock solid, and they push the lungs then push down because they need to make space, and the diaphragm pushes down. This area here has not been prepared for the increase in intra-abdominal pressure, so the pressure has to go through a weak point. And for most people, it's their belly. So then we have this belly breathing. Now, when we breathe into our belly like this, it creates an incredible amount of pressure at the front wall, weakening this anterior chain. So people eventually become a bit like this. Or it pushes into here, but it also, because the pelvic floor is not ready for the excess pressure, it also pushes down into the pelvic floor. Now, the other thing that happens when we push straight down and breathe into our belly is that now our back has to take on the pressure as if we were pregnant. So remember, in pregnancy, as your belly grows, your pelvis tilts forward and your back then takes a lot of strain, especially if we've not been taught to breathe with our ribcage, which none of us ever are. So that's what happens with that type of breathing. And those are the kind of pressure points there are. Now, the other type of breathing is upper chest breathing. So when people predominantly breathe with their upper chest during daily life, their lungs, they're only using the top 25% of their lungs. So then you don't get enough oxygen into your body, and then we get more anxiety, more stress in the shoulders because we're overusing the scalenes to breathe. They tend to lift the collarbone up when they're breathing, and we've got this movement happening. This means that we're getting no activation predictably into the abdominal wall, which means that the abdominal wall is not working to create proper pressure in the spine. So we get weak back issues and things as well with the spine. And it also means that the pelvic floor is not having this juicy movement pattern that we're going to talk about that happens with the lateral breathing. Does that make sense to everybody so far? The third breath is a paradoxical breath, and this happens more often than you think. So my ladies can be widening their rib cage, but as they widen their rib cage, their abdominals come in. Now, if we imagine what's happening with that scenario, is as you open your rib cage, what should be happening is as your rib cage opens, your diaphragm stretches out and descends a little. As it descends, the abdominal wall widens to create more space for the increase in pressure because the diaphragm is pushing your abdominal organs down. Now imagine you're widening your rib cage, your diaphragm is pushing your abdominal organs down. They need more space, but you're squeezing the space. So this can create an enormous amount of pressure up into the diaphragm. And this is more when I see reflux in clients who first come to see me, because they're actually, as they inhale, they're pulling their abdominal wall in. And this is creating a pressure chamber where the pressure is then pushing back up, either into your back muscles or up into your diaphragm. So this is more when I see with paradoxical breathing. And it's also with that paradoxical breathing that I find a lot of my ladies who run leak. So we're going to check how you breathe and make sure it's not that in a minute, because it can look like you're doing the right thing, because your rib cage can be widening, but your abdominals are drawing in. So if I'm looking at your rib cage, I'm seeing a great rib cage opening, but that doesn't necessarily mean, and this is during normal breath, not during the apnea. So this sometimes can be a catchy one. The third way that we breathe. So this is the way that we breathe that Wendy was asking about as well. So as we inhale, so this is the way we should be breathing for our whole body. As we inhale, our lungs fill with air. As they fill with air, our diaphragm starts to move. As our diaphragm starts to move, it should trigger our rib cage to widen. As our rib cage widens, it triggers the abdominal muscles to extend. Now, the big transverse muscle that comes round here, it starts here at the back, and it moves all the way around to the front. It attaches to the top of your pelvis and the bottom of your rib cage, but it also attaches into your diaphragm. So as you widen your rib cage, your transverse muscle extends. It goes into extension. As the other muscles that go into extension are your obliques. So you've got one set of obliques that starts on your rib cage here. It's called the internal obliques. So they're like pockets. They're like pockets like this, one on either side. They draw down towards the linea alba, where they meet the external obliques that come up the way. So it's a diagonal like this through the rectus abdominis sheath. They attach into the linea alba. This one attaches to the inguinal ligament. This one attaches to the ribs. So as we inhale, they extend like this. And as we exhale, they contract back in like this. So they're creating more space for the intra-abdominal pressure. And then as we exhale, they're squeezing to allow the change of gas up through our body. Okay, the next set of muscles, or the next muscle, is the rectus abdominis sheath that goes from here, it's quite far up, down to your pubic bone. And it's there primarily to connect your rib cage with your pelvis so we don't lose connection. So on an inhale, it does this movement, again to create space, and also to allow your pelvis to tilt forward a little. I mean, these are tiny movements. They're not as big as I'm making them out to be just now. And then as we exhale, it draws back in, again to help support your pelvis back to its neutral. So it's not designed to push out in front either. You know, none of these ones are. However, now what happens? So we've got what's going on with the muscles, most of them. We'll come back to the back extensors because they're attached to your pelvis. So as we inhale and widen our rib cage to the sides, because it's been triggered by your diaphragm, all your abdominal muscles also extend to create more space for the pressure that's increasing because the diaphragm is pressing down onto the abdominal organs. Now, because it's got this connection to the pelvis, as it starts to widen here, it starts to draw the pelvis in at the top. The inlet, so this is the inlet. The top of your pelvis is called the inlet. The bottom of the pelvis is called the outlet, for obvious reasons. So as it pulls these bits in a little, it creates more space for the transverse muscle. But it's all about creating space. As these bits at the top, these are called the iliac crest, as these top bits move in, they've got a spiral, they're part of the same bone that your sit bone is. That's one side of your pelvis. So as this moves in the way, bye Catherine, I'll see you soon. As these ones move in the way, the sit bones slightly move out the way. Now they do this because as the abdominal viscera is pushed down and there's an increase in pressure, these guys, the abdominal viscera pushes down onto the pelvic viscera, the pelvic organs. So the pelvic organs are then pressed down. And this is a great thing because remember, we've got loads of fascia and connective tissue in here. So as the pelvic organs are pressed down and then released during the inhale and exhale, we're creating movement within the pelvis, which keeps the fascia juicy. So we need to have that. So that increase in pressure as well down the way, because what happens now, our body now wants to stop the descent. So otherwise it'll be press down, and keep pressing down forever and ever and ever. And then on the exhale, it all comes back up again. So we want to have something that's going to help us counteract the downwards movement of our organs. So our body's really clever and has adjusted for this. So as we inhale, we widen the rib cage, this all widens, the pelvis starts to go in at the front, in at the top and out to the bottom. But as it does this kind of movement. So this is my top and this is my bottom. So this is my sit bones. So as it does this. So you can see how my sit bones move out. And again, I'm over exaggerating it, so don't move this much. So as they move out and they lift up. Yeah. So your levator ani muscles, which are a collection of muscles that go from your pubic bone to your coccyx, from your sit bones to your coccyx, from your sit bones to your pubic symphysis, they all cross over all over the place. There's a selection of muscles, and they're really important muscles. But what they do is because they're attached to the sit bones and the pubic symphysis and the coccyx, as we inhale, they lengthen. So they go into what's called extension. So I'm extending my arms, your pelvic floor muscles extend, but because they're attached to these, they also lift up because the bony bits are attached to lift up. So as your pelvic organs are descending down because of the pressure, and the pressure, it's more the pressure as well that's moving down, these guys lengthen and hold and go, hey, stop now. And our exhale starts. And as our exhale starts, what happens during the exhale is as we exhale, we close our lungs, the air starts to come out, or the CO2 comes out. As it does this, the lungs deflate, the rib cage deflates, the diaphragm moves up, the diaphragm pulls the abdominal viscera with it because it's all connected. It pulls the pelvic floor viscera with it. And this extended muscle does this contraction back. But as it does it, so this is what you're feeling, Wendy. I'm going to tell you, as it does it, the pelvic bones, so remember they've opened up and they've come up, they close. So we have this like concentric movement in the way. They close and the pelvic floor actually descends a little. Now, so it comes back to kind of a resting place. So it's not tight, it's in resting tone. But the thing you feel lifting, Wendy, are your organs. So remember, your organs, like your bladder and everything, are attached to the connective tissue that goes all the way around this area that connects to the diaphragm here and the top of the organs here. But these organs are also attached by a smooth muscle and fascia to your pelvic floor muscles. So as you exhale, your organs move up, and there will be a slight feeling of the movement of the fascia and connective tissue on the top end of your pelvis moving up. But it's not moving up into tension, it's moving, it's just moving up. It's going, so there's this feeling of that goes on in your body. And people describe it like a plunger, in a coffee plunger. So the pressure pushes down and then it meets the bottom. It can't go any further. So the only thing it can do is come back up again. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm going to say a little thing about the coccyx. So our coccyx, which is like our tail here, as we inhale, coccyx, when this happens with our pelvis, when the sit bone's winding like this, our coccyx flexes out. And it flexes out. It's attached to our big back extensor muscles that go all the way up to here. So as it flexes out, it creates a little bit of a release in them so that you can widen your rib cage easily at the back as well, so it's not being held in tension. And then as we exhale, the coccyx flexes under, giving us a little bit of drawing into the center again of our back muscles. So essentially, everything is widening on the inhale and everything is drawing into the center on the exhale. You know, it's widening in all directions. Does that make sense to everybody? And does that kind of answer your question, Wendy? Cool, good. So you can just do thumbs up. So if you're feeling a movement up, don't fight it. Just let it happen, Wendy. You know, just really let it happen. Relax into it. You know, if you're relaxing into it and thinking, oh, this feels great, you're not going to be holding tension. If you start going, oh, I'm not sure, your body will immediately start holding tension. It's like that. So we want to just enjoy the feeling of lift during your exhale. Okay, I know that it's coming from your organs, not necessarily from the bottom of your pelvic floor. Helen.
Sorry, just a quick question. If you never feel a lift, is it still doing something? Because
Yes, it's all attached. So as long as you're widening your rib cage and then closing your rib cage, this is all happening inside your body. You don't really need to think about it. All you need to be aware of is that you're widening your rib cage and closing your rib cage, and the rest should follow suit. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to some actual practice. So we're going to come to lying on the floor on your back, because the reason for being on your back is because you're in a neutral position, and it means that you're not working or fighting gravity. And when I speak to my ladies with hiatal hernias and things, we always start on our backs, because then we're not fighting, we're not doing extra work. So you're going to lie on your backs with your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor. Now, the reason our knees are bent is so that we release the psoas muscles, so we're not holding any tension in the back of our psoas. See there. If you've got a tendency to have posture patterns that are slightly off, this can create added stress through your psoas. So now that we are here, what I'd like you to do is put your hands towards the bottom of your rib cage. So we're not worrying about the top of our rib cage, we're just going to the bottom of our rib cage. And we want to feel our abdominal wall as well, because I want you to be aware of whether on your exhale, on your inhale, your abdominal wall is drawing in or whether it's opening. So maybe putting one hand on your ribcage and one hand on your abdominals, just to make sure there's no paradoxical breathing going on. Okay, so we're going to do 3 breaths, and I like them to be small breaths. I don't want you to try and over-exaggerate the movement at all. So it's like a natural, soft breath. So just inhaling into your rib cage though. And just make sure that your abdominal wall is expanding, and then exhale. And make sure your abdominal wall is drawing in.
And it shouldn't be a massive movement, you should just sense it. Now you've got that sense of expansion, let's do another few. So you're really sensing that expansion through your body. Now take the hand that was on your abdominal wall and place it on the side of your abdominals, and just make sure that when you inhale, you're also feeling the expansion on the side and to the back of your body. So I'll put that one here, just so it's right here. So it's right on the side of my abdominal wall underneath my rib cage. So I'm sensing to see whether I'm actually expanding my body to the sides and the back as well. On the inhale and on the exhale, it should all draw back into the center. Good. Now I'm going to get you to place your hands just by your side, nice and relaxed. So shoulders nice and relaxed. So I always say to think about your shoulders being on the floor, but I don't mean this part of your shoulders. This part here, the glenohumeral joint here. And this might be what's going on with Lou, for example, is that she might be trying to push her shoulders towards the floor. What I'd like you to, it's the shoulder blades. So what I'd like you to think about is the space between it. So your shoulder blades are like this, they slide. They should slide. Your shoulder blades at the back of you, so we're going to feel this in a minute. Your shoulder blades at the back of you should slide. So they slide like they're coming around your body and then back. So this is the kind of movement they make. But when we start, I'd like you to make sure there's space between them. So they shouldn't be stuck together all the time. They should have space between them. So we're looking to feel that trapezius space in between the shoulder blades. So that's what we're looking for. And when we inhale, we should feel that space increasing. And when we exhale, it should draw gently back in. The same way that happens with our abdominal wall. So arms just gently on the floor beside you, or you can put them on your abdominals, any way you like that's comfortable for you. And we're just going to take a moment to notice the space between our shoulder blades. Now we can do an exercise where we reach our hands away and we feel like we're really stretching the shoulder blades and then pulling the shoulder blades back into the spine and then stretching them out again to help you bring a little bit more awareness to that space. You might feel when you're lying here that space between your shoulder blades seems to be off the floor. And this is when we wing our shoulders. So what we can do, if you feel like your space between your shoulder blades is off the floor, we can take our hands up above us with our palms facing in, and we can reach one shoulder blade up. That's like reaching away with our fingertips, and then allow it to sink back down. So we want to get rid of the tension in it. Reach the other shoulder blade up, and then lower it back down. And then reach both shoulder blades up and lower them back down. And then bring your hands back down again, and hopefully it feels a little bit softer. And if it doesn't, it's a work in progress. You just need to do that a little bit more. So we're trying to find that space between them. So now we find that space between the shoulder blades. We're going to do 3 of those breaths we've just been doing, just really focusing on this feeling of expansion. And I'd like you to visualize your lungs inflating, your ribcage widening, your abdominal wall inflating, your sit bones widening. And remember, these are all really gentle, subtle movements, so don't try to overdo it. So take your time, nice and slowly. Inhale through your nose, inflate your lungs, ribcage widens, abdominals widen, sit bones widen, and exhale. Start exhaling, your ribcage closes, your abdominals draw in, your pelvis lifts, your sit bones draw in. Good. We're going to do another 3 like that, just really focusing on that full body breath. And then exhaling. So as you inhale, you may feel that your pelvis tilts forwards a little, and that is okay. You know, that's part of the movement pattern, but it's a tiny movement. So when we do that kind of red light, green light thing where I get you to tilt your pelvis forwards and tuck your tailbones under, that's an exaggeration of the movement. But the movement we feel is just a very subtle version of that. I mean, everything is moving during your breath. Right, we're going to address the kind of over breathing thing now. So we're going to inhale, and as you exhale, I'd like you to imagine that there is a, you know, when you sit in a car when you were a kid, you might, and you blow in the window and then draw in that, in the mist on the window, like draw rude things so your parents will see them later. So we're going to do that breath. So we're going to inhale and we're going to exhale, and that is going to be the end of our exhale. And we're going to do 3 of these. So, and then we're going to see how our body feels afterwards. Then we're going to talk about the apnea after this. So we're going to inhale through your nose. So it's a really soft breath. And you can't over exhale with that breath. I mean, you have to really try really hard to over exhale. So this time we're going to do 3 of those. And at the end of your third one, you're going to pause and you're going to widen your ribs, but not fully widen them. I'd like you to widen them to your 50%. So if you take a moment here, just find what your 100% is before we go to 50%. So you're going to take an inhale, exhale with that. Close your mouth and nose and widen your ribcage to 100%. So you know what 100% is. So that when we do the next practice, you know what 50% is. Good. So once you finish that one, we're going to do 3 breaths. Again, using that we want our soft exhale to last as long as we can so we can get the most space covered in the window of the car, but we don't want to be forcing any extra air out, yeah? So again, we want a slow exhale, but we want to do it in that gentle breath. So we're going to do 3 breaths, inhaling, exhaling. Inhaling. And as you exhale, just being aware of how it feels in your body. So making sure that as you exhale, everything is drawing in the way and nothing is pushing down or pushing out. Nice, one more. Or after your third one, let's do one more. At the end of this one, you're going to close your mouth and nose and pause. And just widen your ribs to your 50%. So widening to the sides, widening behind, but just very gently. I don't want you to do any more than 50% of this apnea. And when you need to inhale, inhale. And because you've done 50%, as you inhale, your rib cage will have more space to widen. And as you exhale, go back to your. Okay, so let's try another round of that. So we're going to do exactly the same thing for 3 breaths. Being aware of the inhale of the expansion and the exhale of the contraction. At the end of your third one, you're going to close and slowly widen your ribs. When you need to inhale, you're going to inhale again, and you should have space to inhale into because we've only done our 50%. Excellent. So let's add a little bit of a posture to this, because one of the other questions, and I'm going to give you a little bit of chance at the end to say, let me know how that felt in your bodies. Let's go into the postures, because one of the questions was about over tensioning. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to lift your feet off the floor just a fraction. So we're not going to lift them very far off the floor, just a fraction. So all we're doing here, all we're trying to do here is create a little bit of tension through a band of fascia that runs all the way back up your body to your forehead at the front. So when we do this dorsiflexion, all we're doing is creating a little bit of stretch in that. That's it. But stretch is a bad word. Length is probably a better word. Activation is even better. So just lift your feet up a little bit. Now I'd like you to feel like you're just pressing your feet very gently into the floor. It's just a tiny little press. So again, it's just like, yeah, just squishing marshmallows. And now I'd like you to feel like you're holding a ball between your knees. And it's just, you're just gently holding it in place. All of this is very gentle. Good. And then with your arms, I'd like you to have your arms on the floor. And I'd like you just to be aware of the space between your shoulder blades and don't worry about anything else to do with your shoulders. I'd like you just to have relaxed arms on the floor. Really, really super relaxed. And now the cue to try and take this out of your shoulders a little bit is to think about drawing your armpits just very gently down towards your hips. So you're thinking about your armpits, the area underneath your arms. You're just thinking about just very gently drawing it down towards your hips. No stress at all. I'd like you to move your head from side to side, gaze up towards the ceiling. And I'd like you to do 3 of those breaths and a 50% apnea here. So you're inhaling through your nose, thinking about the expansion of your body. Don't think about the rest of your body now, just think about the breath. Exhale your 50%, or your full percent, but with your just make it nice and slow. Expanding on the inhale, contracting on the exhale. One more. Then pause and widen your ribs to just 50%. And when you need to inhale, you're going to inhale here, filling your lungs, but also increasing the space in your rib cage. And then exhale. Okay, we're going to come to a sitting position now. And we want to here, just find your sit bones underneath you. If you need a block or a chair, go and grab one. If you want your legs out in front of you, you can do that. The good thing about sitting cross-legged, or actually legs out in front of you as well, it's a little bit harder to feel what's going on with your sit bones when you sit in the kind of diamond pose. So for this, with the feet again, I just want you to gently dorsiflex them. I don't want you to overdo it. Just a little bit of dorsiflexion. And then I'd like you to feel your sit bones underneath you. And this is going to become important in a minute because we're going to really feel them at the bottom of the breath. And we want to check that our rib cage is not forwards and it's not back, it's not off to one side, that it's directly over the top of your pelvis. And I'd like you just to relax your shoulders. And I'd like you to just remember that space between the shoulder blades, and that's all. Chin horizontal to the floor, head here, moving up. So this is a really nice way for you to feel that your sit bones are rooted and your head is just very gently moving away. And that's the lengthening. That's all you need to do. Just as awareness that the head's not moving towards the pelvis, that the head is moving away from the pelvis. It's just an awareness. It's not a massive, I need to stretch the back of my body massively. Okay, so now we're going to inhale. And as you inhale, we're going to inhale into, remembering the lungs are filling, the diaphragm starting to activate, the rib cage is going to activate. We're going to feel the abdominals grow or extend. And I'd like you just to be aware of that space between the sit bones, just feeling like it's widening a little. And perhaps your sit bones feel like they're a little bit lighter on the floor. That's all we're going to be aware of. And if you can't feel it, it's also okay, because this is just about building awareness. And it took me a long time to build this awareness. So just nice and relaxed with your arms, nice and relaxed with your shoulders. So no, we're not doing any work up here now. The only work that's happening is from our lungs to our rib cage. So you should feel no work here. So taking a nice breath in, inhaling, feeling that kind of cascade, the widening, the widening, the widening all the way down. And as you exhale, feeling the rib cage closing. And just being aware of those sit bones kind of drawing back in gently. And again, it's a micro movement. Inhaling, everything cascades down.
And on the exhale, everything draws up from the top. And the final part, as you exhale, you should really be feeling is the sit bones drawing in, because it's almost the final part. You know, everything happens kind of from top down and then from top up. Okay, so still keeping these shoulders nice and relaxed. We're going to do 3 breaths, exhaling as if we're doing that breath. And at the end of the third one, we're going to pause and widen our ribs. One more. At the end of this exhale, exactly the same as the other exhales, I'd like you to close your mouth and nose, hold the air out, and widen your ribs to 50%. And when you're ready to inhale, you're going to inhale, allow the ribcage to widen again, and exhale. Okay, let's bring some arms into this. So again, the arms, we're not trying to reach the whole, pull the arms or the shoulders up from our scalenes, these muscles here. So we're just going to reach the arms out onto your legs. So we've got some support for them. And I'd like you just to be aware as you inhale, so just for these 3 breaths, as you inhale, I want you to think about your shoulder blades almost like trying to wrap around your body. And as you exhale, they roll back into place. So inhale, think about that wrapping round. Exhale, think about the shoulder blades drawing back in. And they're just, when they draw back in, they're just relaxing back in. It's almost like we're opening our wings on the inhale. And as we exhale, we're drawing our wings back in and folding them in towards our body. If you think about your shoulder blades like their wings. Nice. At the end of your third one, you're going to pause and slowly widen your ribs to your 50% again. Nice. Good. At the end of that one, you're inhaling into your ribcage and opening it to its full extent, and then letting it go for your exhale. Okay, so now we've done it with our arms like this. What we're going to do is we're going to take our arms out towards the side into a T position. So now we can really feel that idea of the shoulder blades moving, almost like they're moving into a hug on the inhale, and then they're coming away from the hug on the exhale. So again, just focusing on the shoulders just now, don't worry about the rest of it. It will be happening if we're breathing into our ribcage. So ready to inhale. When you're ready, you're just going to take your inhale in. Think about the shoulder blades coming around like a hug. And then coming back in and down. One more. Exhaling. Then close your mouth and nose. Just take a moment, like a beat. And then widen your ribcage to their 50% again. Nice. And when you need to inhale, you're going to inhale. Good. Elise, keep your arms up like that just for a minute. Come back to where you were. So you're very hyperextended through your elbows. So with these positions, in order to keep us from overstretching the joints, we want to feel, especially with hypermobility, but for everybody, we want to feel like the joint is soft. So we've got space in the joint. Yeah, almost like you're hugging. So if you see here, it's not straight, ma'am. I'm not like this. I've got this little tiny micro bend in the elbow. And this takes out a lot of the stress we're always thinking about having space between all our joints. So anytime we go into a position where we feel like we've not got space in the joints, just be aware of that and bring the space back. Okay, then from here we've got one last arm position to look at, which is the internal rotation. So we're going to take our hands out towards the side, just in a downwards V. And I'd like you just to take a moment to feel space between the joints. The space should feel quite floppy between the joints at this point, yeah? Then what we're going to do is we're going to rotate our wrist, our elbow and our shoulder, so our palms face behind us, but the joints are still quite floppy. There's nothing happening with our neck. There should be nothing with the scalings going on at the moment. I mean, there will be stuff happening, but we're not thinking about it. And then we're just going to bend our elbows and place our hands on tops of our thighs. Now, at a very basic level, without doing anything else, this is working all the muscles we want it to work. So if you feel that you've been feeling too much tension when you've been doing your practice, just coming back to thinking about those joints feeling nice and floppy before you come into the position. This is already now really working, sliding and gliding the nerves. And that's all we're looking for. Now, 3 breaths here, again, thinking about the shoulder blades, just that movement of the shoulder blades to keep some movement in this area so we don't feel tension. So ready to inhale, feel the shoulder blades moving and wrapping around your body from the back to the front. And then drawing in and down. Nice. One more. At the end, close your mouth and nose, pause, and widen your ribcage to 50%. Remembering that the neck is relaxed, nothing's really going on up there. The only thing we're thinking about, if thinking about anything, is how it's moving away from your sit bones. Good. And then let's wrap that all together. So now we're not going to think too much about any of it. We're just going to allow the breath to come. So now our body, we've kind of taught our body and our nervous system what we want it to do. So that's whichever arm position you like the best, whether it was the external rotation or the external rotation out towards the side here, or whether it was the internal rotation with floppy limbs, whichever one you like the best is what we're going to use. Now, I'd like you just to think about the breath again now. So as you inhale, the rib cage is expanding because it needs to. The abdominals are expanding. The sit bones are expanding. The coccyx is drawing out a little. And then on the exhale, the diaphragm is drawing everything back up again, and the sit bones are going to draw in. So take your time, 3 breaths, inhaling through your nose. Exhaling with that soft breath. Inhaling. And again, go at your own pace, so don't ignore my inhales. Just make sure it's nice and slow. At the end of your 3rd one, you're going to close your mouth and nose, wait for a beat, and then slowly widen your ribcage to just 50%. Nice. And when you need to inhale, you're going to inhale, widen your ribcage, allowing that width again, and then exhale round.